the popularity of social media platforms like Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn has really held up over the years. In fact, like among Americans alone, about 7 in 10 use social media, so very high number. As well, social media, unlike traditional mass communications platforms, it offers ways to reach and engage audiences faster and at a lower cost. Yet success takes some strategy. And that really gets into what are your goals. Who are you trying to reach? Social media audiences can vary broadly, even in just say like one particular type of platform. Also too, on the strategy front, what tactics like audience targeting and engagement strategies should you be using? There are big differences too on just the platforms themselves relative to purpose and the types of audiences on various social media platforms and the types of content used. And I found really that social media success is generally 1 part strategy and 2 parts good content that's both digestible and appealing to your target audience. Sydney and I are excited to dive into all of these critical considerations with you today and to share what we've learned to help you and your organizations achieve success using social media. We'd like to kick it off this morning asking you quickly to please put in the chat, what are your more pressing challenges and concerns when it comes to social media? What areas are you looking to better master? We'll just give a real quick minute if there is any feedback. Engagement, I see from Kathy Klezik, very critical. And that is one of the big pluses of social media, is that it's more two-way in nature, where we're hearing back from audiences through clicks and comments and likes. Growing a diverse audience is another good one, and there are some targeting tools that we'll get into that can help us reach those more diverse audiences. Older audience, so back onto the diversity there. And engaging audiences in more of a two-way dialogue. Get more followers to notice posts, definitely, to grow your base. We'll definitely talk about strategies to do that. So our main aim during this training session is to help you get more out of social media. And what that really comes to is maximizing audience and reach and engagement. Social media offers big advantages in reaching more people and engaging them in your content through likes and shares and comments, as well directing individuals online to take a desired action, such as to sign up for the Get There Challenge, as an example. Gaining greater visibility through social media can also help increase regular touch with audiences and to build your digital brand, awareness about your organization and what you provide, what you do in the local community. Sydney and I are going to focus specifically on how to social media essentials for maximizing audience reach and engagement. This includes providing you with different placement strategy options to achieve optimal impact, both organic, which is non-paid posts onto your page, as well as paid posts. And fortunately, with social, you can choose to have a very small budget even and get good results. Just even for a few dollars. Sydney and I will also give you tips on curating content impactful content, developing posts and tweets that capture audience attention, and as well resonating with them. All so often, again, good placements, you may have a really good placement strategy, but if their content isn't there, if it's just too much to digest, or it's a bit lackluster, it doesn't have a lot of audience appeal, then your results can be quite limited. As well, we are going to really get into the social media budgeting, and as well how to maximize post and tweet optimization. We're going to get into as well really the importance of putting even a little budget behind your social. And it's a bit challenging, I know, when you don't have a big budget, but you don't really need a big budget. Even say 10, more ideally $25 can go a long, long way in boosting audience reach and exposure. Really boosting posts or sponsoring them is putting money toward a paid placement. And what that means is that the non-followers in your area that we can target in a lot of different ways will see that content. So it goes far beyond just this organic follower sees posts. And then as well, we're going to talk very importantly about tracking performance metrics and making adjustments in real time to achieve a better return on investment. Really, even if it's $25, how many more individuals in your community are you able to reach? Next slide, Sydney. So let's take a minute to really dig into why use social media. No doubt social media does have its detractors, especially attracting negative and often very off the wall commentary. That does require some close monitoring and management. Sometimes too, a lot of organizations tend to shy away from social media because it's an enigma. It's really hard to understand how it all works. There are a lot of nuances and layers which we'll cover today, at least give a good overview. But oftentimes it's thought that, gee, we just need some college kid who, knows tech, who grew up with tech, who can run our social. And as such, a lot of times they just don't see the value in what social can deliver, even again on a small budget. So specifically, why social media? Again, the popularity remains high today. There's a huge audience reach potential. This includes users of all ages and as well backgrounds. I remember launching a colorectal cancer awareness campaign back in 2008, right when Facebook was starting to get hot, and it was felt generally Facebook just wasn't used by the at-risk group who are folks aged 50 and older. And what I have definitely found is that even older audiences, even when I've run like Medicare marketing campaigns, we see really great traction among those older audiences that I think honestly we got pulled into social just so they could keep up with their families and with each other across distances. So really great opportunities there in reaching a very diverse audience in a very targeted way. And that really gets into this next key reason to use social, and that is you're able to more narrowly target very specific audiences. And again, even if you only have $25, you're able to really narrowly target the audience so that it doesn't take a big budget. And what's great is a lot of platforms enable you to do paid posts, particularly to a lot of different folks based on a range of variables from like location and demographics. Also to a lot of the platforms out there have some performance tracking tools that can be used. And so really, is you're able to, you know, I will say, I remember first getting out of college, and the game was really more in traditional mass media, where you would run TV ads and you would run radio and you would run billboards, and you would spend all of this time, of course, developing these ads, and then you'd get them out and hope you made the mark. You hope that you're creative, and sometimes you had the money to do research and sometimes you didn't. You hope those ads would really resonate with who you're trying to reach. Well, social's great because you can dial differently both the targeting and see, you know, maybe there's one audience segment over another that, you know, really resonates with your messaging. And then also too, you can dial the content and try some different messages, different graphics even, and see what works best, and then change it up right there in the moment, as opposed to in a traditional mass marketing campaign, you'd have to create a whole new radio spot and then get that spot, you know, running. That's very time consuming and of course, even more expensive. So social enables you to really turn the dials in real time to get, you know, even better return on investment. And then as well, social offers a very robust range of opportunities to engage audiences. You tend to think of like a billboard as a one-way communication. That's the sender putting out the message and it is seen by the receiver. In social media, there's more of a two-way flow where the sender puts out a message, a social post, and then the receivers, who are the users, then can like as well as share content and even comment on content. And of course, that's when you hear about social posts going viral, which means that their friends then see the posts, and so you're reaching even greater audiences. And also too, we can orchestrate through social, directing audiences to websites to get more information, to learn more about things, as well to sign up for things, again, like the Get There Challenge happening in October, a little plug there. And the other really great thing about social media that I just want to underscore is it doesn't take a big budget. Advertising for TV, for radio takes many thousands of dollars. Social media, certainly the more budget you have, the greater your reach, but you can do it on a shoestring and you can do it very effectively. Next slide, Sydney. So let's get into a little bit, what platforms should you use? We listed here Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. A few of the top platforms. Not included here are like TikTok and a few other more political platforms that you know, we're just not going to necessarily get into today. But each platform, there are some pros and cons, I think, to each. And as well, sometimes those pros and cons do interrelate with not just the content that's typical or you can actually post. There are limitations there. For example, Facebook, very, very versatile on the content front. You can post just text, you can post photos and graphics. And in fact, recently, Facebook finally lightened up on its rules for how much text you can put on graphics. So there's even, you know, more, I think, opportunity. Of course, you don't want to overload any post, whether it's a graphic or the post itself with lots of text, but still being able to do very broad and versatile content, I think, is valuable because it does interrelate to what your audience is seeing, and you're able to interact with that audience base in a lot of different ways. Facebook too, just getting more into the pros of it. Very broad audience base, although in more recent years, a lot of younger audiences have migrated, I think, over to Instagram, which is, I think, frankly, why Facebook decided to buy Instagram. Younger audiences do tend to go more to TikTok. It's even quicker. It's more visual oriented. So Instagram, different from Facebook, you can post a lot of visuals and photos. And of course, you know, as they always say, a photo or a picture says 1,000 words. So it becomes a real audience pleaser in that front. But it's still limited content, and the audience base tends to be fairly young. So if you're looking for a more broad audience or an older audience, Instagram may not be the place for you. And then there's Twitter. We've heard a lot about Twitter in recent years with, say, politics and how elected officials are just tweeting out and out. It's tend to makes the channel very opinion focused, very advocacy focused. It is a good place to do updates and alerts, and also to keep in mind, typically individuals tend to be on one or two channels, but not always all channels, and they tend to migrate to one or the other. So think about the types of audiences and types of content you have when you select which platforms to use. And that's particularly, I think, interesting with like LinkedIn. LinkedIn has become a huge channel. I tend to think of it as like the Facebook for business, not just business managers and leaders, but also to workers. If you're an employee, if you're in the marketplace as a laborer, you do tend to really key in on LinkedIn. And it offers, I think, even more opportunity today than it used to, because not only has the audience base gotten a lot wider, more people are on LinkedIn. It's more of like just that common practice to have a LinkedIn profile. But I've seen a lot more organizations now tapping into LinkedIn to reach very specific audiences on the business and the employer worker front. And what's nice about LinkedIn, similar to Facebook, is that it has a lot of great targeting tools where you can dial in interests and location and even work title. Facebook has that similar kind of targeting, but looking back at Twitter, that's, I think, one of the platform's cons, is that it doesn't really quite have the targeting tools available to really reach a very narrow audience. And then there's YouTube, which is kind of like the influencer channel of social to me. It's very popular with like all things how to do, and there are some advantages there. It's all video based, so it can be often an audience pleaser. It's not so much things you read, but there are a lot of ads in YouTube, and as well, there's just a limited content window. So one reason why, again, TikTok, we just didn't include it today. There is a lot of controversy around TikTok. I'll just note very quickly that relative to being brand sensitive, TikTok does have some issues. And really what I mean by that is it isn't as regulated, and sometimes things really run amok that are not true. There's a lot of misinformation. I'm not saying don't use TikTok, but just keep that in mind. And as we've heard too, a lot of concern comes out with Facebook and even Twitter. So it's something to think about when you're using platforms and reaching audiences. So real quick, if you could go to the next slide, Sydney, I know we don't have a ton of time here today. I really want to dive into the importance of the developing content and really putting some thought behind it relative to who your audience is, especially when it comes to using appeals that you know work well for the audiences you want to reach. That can be very challenging when certainly you don't have research. I will say in those cases, use your gut, but lead with appeals of what's in it for me for audiences. Try to integrate in as well being a resource. That is another great way to build a following, is like, you're like, wow, that content's really useful. I want to get their posts. I want to get their tweets, because this is stuff that I use in my life. It's like news you can use in that regard. Here we have an example of a get their post, of how to choose your, good walking shoes. So it's news you can use, that's easy, of course, to just digest. That's another thing that I think is really important, is limiting text, not just on the images, but also sometimes a longer post is a good idea, but most of the time is a good general rule of thumb. Try to keep particularly Facebook posts somewhat limited as well. LinkedIn, I mean, you can run a really long post, for example, on LinkedIn, but you only get to see like the first couple lines. So keep that in mind when you're curating the content. It might be a post topic that people are going to want to use. And you can even think too, like if doing a LinkedIn post, make it more of a clickable kind of thing to pull your audience in, using teasers and that kind of thing. And then I can't underscore it enough. It is a really good idea to try to post frequently over like the course of a month. 1 or 2 posts here and there. It's hard for people to even see that you're out there and that you've got good content. So increasing post frequency helps in being that useful resource. And it helps greatly with visibility that then would compel people to want to follow you. And as well on the post frequency, it doesn't always have to be paid. It can also be organic. Just keep in mind, and Sydney will get into this a little bit, organic posts really just go to a limited number of your followers. And I've noticed that as an interesting trend, particularly among like Facebook, is when you post organically, it only goes to a limited number of your followers at any time. So posting frequently helps overcome that, as an example. And then certainly too, share links, share other information. We've been doing that a lot more on the Get There channel as a way for people to learn more, to help drive that engagement, that learning, in building awareness. And we've seen some great traction with it. And of course, we encourage you to follow the Get There channel and please share our content. And if you also want to, for example, boost or pay for sharing content, we can make that happen. We can easily provide you with assets. So that is one limitation, just to let you know about, is that when you share, a lot of times when you share a post, like especially on Facebook, you can't necessarily put any budget behind it. So I'm going to kick it now over to Sydney to talk about the finer points and the nuts and bolts of social media implementation.
Thank you, Kelly. Hi, everyone. My name is Sydney Herbst, and I'm with Alta Planning and Design. With Kelly's help, I manage the Get There Oregon social media channels. So implementing social media ads can be very overwhelming at first, and it can definitely cause some frustration. I still get a little bit frustrated with some of the features in Ad Manager, but it's honestly all about practice. I pretty much knew nothing about social media 3 years ago. And now I'm co-leading a workshop. So if I can do it, then so can you. So the implementation section of this workshop will just be an introduction to key features of Facebook ads. And following this workshop, I would recommend exploring the tools yourself. So actually going into Facebook and going into the ad manager and the business tools so that you can have a more hands-on experience, because I'm going to be throwing a lot of information at you, and I think it's best to just get in there yourself and take a look. So my other tip is to not be afraid to lean on Facebook Business Help Center. You can just Google that, and that's a great resource for everything related to Facebook ads. Okay, so one of the best things about social media advertising is the audience targeting. So in this slide, you can see just an example. It's a screenshot from my ad manager, and it's an example of the type of targeting we do for Get There Oregon. So one of the best features is geo targeting. So geo targeting allows you to deliver ads to your audience based on their location. So for Get There Oregon, our audience is statewide, so we target Oregon as a whole. But you can get down to zip codes and postal codes. You can do cities, states, and countries. And then it also allows you to choose a few options based on that geo-target. So you can choose people living in or recently in this location. You can choose people just living in the location or people recently in this location. And you can actually target travelers in the location as well. So there's a lot of detailed options for that. So there's, as you can see here, there's also age and gender. But then you can get really, you can do some hyper targeting, or what Facebook calls detailed targeting. So there's endless options for the type of things that you can pinpoint. But detailed targeting can be based on ads that people have clicked on in the past, pages that they engage with. So, many of you know on Facebook, people can just go and like a page, something that they're interested in. Activities people engage in on Facebook related to things like their device usage and travel preferences. And then demographics like age, gender, and location. And even the mobile device they use and the speed of their network connection. So it's a little bit unnerving to know how many things Facebook is tracking, but it's helpful from an ad stance. So the detailed targeting, as you can see in my screenshot here, this is an example of what we target for Get There Oregon. So you can do interests, behaviors, employers, and those, it has a search box where you can literally just type in things related to whatever your ad is. So as you can see here, we have walking, saving my family money, volunteering, civic engagement, sustainability, sustainable living, physical fitness, carbon footprint, telecommuting, self-help. So just kind of these buzzwords for the type of content that we're putting out there. And then our standard behavior is commuters, because we're trying to reach people who are getting to and from work. So it's a little bit overwhelming at first, just because it's like, what should I even begin to type in for this? But if you just start, I mean, it populates things for you. So if you just start thinking of keywords related to your ad, then you can just try typing it in, and it might have a variation of what you're trying to get at. But you can just play around with different options. There's not really a perfect formula for what you choose. So the other awesome thing about Facebook is they have a feature that's called A and B testing. And so that's where you can try different things to see what works. A/B testing lets you change variables such as your ad creative or the graphic that you're using, audience or placement to determine which strategy performs best and improve your future campaigns. So Facebook takes your budget and divides it equally and randomly to divide exposure. And then this will allow you to easily compare the two strategies. So if you're unsure of what is going to be the best target for a particular ad, you can try this A/B testing strategy and change one variable to see what works. And then that'll hopefully inform future campaigns so that there's less question marks about it. Okay, so the previous slide it had the screenshot from Facebook ads, but a lot of this also applies to boosted posts. So I just want to give a quick overview of that because they are a little bit different. So Facebook ads are run through what's called Facebook Ad Manager, which I have referenced. And it has more advanced customization features, which I was kind of getting into previously. But you can also boost an individual post from your newsfeed. So unlike an ad, a boosted post is a regular Facebook post that you have posted organically on your newsfeed, and you can boost it. So you can pay a little bit of money to reach a wider audience, but it still shows up in your newsfeed. If you just start from Facebook ad and create an ad directly from there, it won't show up in your newsfeed necessarily. There is an option, which we use a lot, where you can kind of combine the two methods and post organically on your newsfeed, then go into Facebook ad and choose existing content to create an ad out of. I know that's kind of confusing, but right now let's just focus on boosted posts. So the graphic on the right-hand side shows the back end. So here's just an example of a Facebook post that we had on our newsfeed, this pop quiz post, and it has the option there to boost it. So when you click boost post, you see what's on the right here. And when you're an administrator of a Facebook page, you can decide the budget, duration of the ad, and audience. So a lot of similarities to the what's in the Facebook Ad Manager. Where boosted posts may initially optimize for page likes, comments, and shares or overall brand awareness, Facebook ads can optimize for more advanced things like app installs, website conversions, video views, shop orders, and more. But as you can see in the screenshot, you can still go through the process of selecting interests and geo targeting and age. Also, both options allow you to select Instagram for ad placement, which is awesome because you don't have to go through two processes for posting on Facebook and Instagram. You can connect your two accounts, just check a box, and then your ads will also appear on Instagram. yeah, and like I mentioned, there is a way to choose an existing post from the Facebook Ad Manager if you want your post to appear on your page, but also you want the more advanced customizations. Okay, so let's talk about.
We have a question. Will ads appear on Instagram without extra cost?
Yes. Sorry, I'm meaning to go backwards here. Yeah, so you choose a budget, and then Facebook automatically divides your budget to reach both platforms. That's the one nice thing about them being connected. Okay, so schedule and budgets, two very important things when you're running a Facebook post. So in this slide, you can see another screenshot from Ad Manager. And so when you're going through all of the specifications about geo targeting and interests, budget and schedule, there's this tool on the side, this audience definition tool that shows you your potential reach. It shows you estimated daily results, link clicks, and if your audience is too specific or too broad. So the sweet spot is in that green area. We try to aim for right in the middle of that, because that's going to be the most effective ad. So how long to run your ad or post? And everything I'm about to walk through, like there isn't really a perfect answer, but we just have some suggestions for you based on our experience. So how long to run your ad or post? We recommend no less than 2 days, but even that is a little bit short, and it's probably better to go longer than that. And then no more than 2, maybe 3 weeks. So this definitely depends on the topic. So if it's a, kind of a hot button issue or something that's going to be short term, then maybe you have a shorter post. But in the transportation world, I think we're trying to reach, we're just trying to get people's attention, and our content can last for a long time. So I would go on the longer end. But then there's a balance, because you don't want people to get tired of what they're seeing. So it's always good to change up your creative or the graphic that you're using, so that people don't see the same thing over and over again and get kind of annoyed with that. So with Ad Manager, you can actually go in and use the same parameters and just switch out the graphic partway through. So if you're running a longer ad, you might want to consider that. And then for timing, we often avoid posting on Sundays or days that we have seen are slower. I think that in general, weekday mornings are a peak time for social media, so you might want to consider posting at that time. For post frequency, if you're brand new to doing this, I think that starting with once per week is a good goal. And then ultimately, if you can, work your way up to 2 to 3 times per week, which can include sharing other people's posts. So it doesn't all have to be original content. It could be sharing Get Theirs posts, for example. But just keeping up that frequency so that your audience knows that they begin to trust you and see you as a legitimate resource. So how much money to put towards it? As Kelly mentioned before, a little bit of money goes a long way on Facebook. So Kelly mentioned maybe $10 to $25. I think that $25 is a great place to start. And then, you know, depending on your budget, up to $100 or $200 will go a really long way. We have a lot of success right in that range, but if you don't have a ton of budget, then $25 is great, and you'll be able to see how much that expands the reach that compared to an organic post. So my overall suggestion is just that this is a guessing game. Like, you can play around with ad length and budget and your geo targets or your interests, and just see what it does to this audience definition tool. See how it affects it. You know, you might see that a 2-week ad bumps up the reach, but for some reason a 5-day ad decreases it greatly, and you don't really know why, but you can play around and just kind of test it out. I don't think that there's a perfect formula. I think you just kind of have to play around and see what happens. So jumping back to Facebook Ad Manager, Facebook Ad Manager is like an onion. It has layers, and it's a little bit complicated and confusing, but I think that this chart here does a really good job of just kind of breaking it up. So as I mentioned before, Facebook Ad Manager is your starting point for running ads on Facebook, Instagram, and Facebook Messenger. It's an all-in-one tool for creating ads, managing when and where they'll run, and tracking how well your campaigns are performing. It's a powerful ad management tool, but it's designed for advertisers of any experience level. So the top layer of the onion is the campaign. So this is when you go in and you have to start with a campaign, and you name it, which doesn't really matter what it's called. You set the campaign objective. So this can be traffic if you're pointing people to a link. It can be engagement if you want people to comment on your posts and share it, or it can just be reach. So there's a few options there, and based on your content, you can choose. And then it has the budget sharing option if you're wanting to do the A/B testing or have one budget for multiple ad sets. So then underneath the campaign, there's ad sets. And this was the screenshot that I showed you at the beginning that it's when you designate budget and schedule, geo targeting, and audience. So that's kind of where you're determining who you want this ad to reach. And then underneath ad set is the ad itself. So this is where you plug in the copy for the ad, the graphic, and the URL if you're pointing to a website. So as I mentioned, Facebook Ad Manager is also a great place to track your metrics and see how your ads are performing. So some useful metrics that we look at to compare our ads include clicks, click-through rate, impressions, and reach. And what's great about Ad Manager is the definitions of these things are right in there. You can just hover over clicks and it tells you what that is. So clicks, that one's more obvious, the number of clicks on your ads. Click-through rate is the percentage of times people saw your ad and performed a click. Impressions is the number of times your ads were on a screen. And reach is the number of people who saw your ads at least once. And reach is different from impressions because impressions might include multiple views on your ads by the same people. So we recommend just creating a simple tracking spreadsheet. And I update it monthly, but more frequent than that is probably better. But this will just allow you to compare your ads and draw conclusions about what seems to be working and what doesn't. Sometimes when you take a look at it all together, it's hard to know why something worked and something didn't. It can be kind of random. But even if you don't fully understand the meaning behind it, you can still play off of that knowledge and use some of the same parameters that you use. So one example is that over the summer, I think last year, we used kind of a random interest, which was farmers markets, because our post was related to getting outdoors. And so we just kind of threw farmers markets in there. And for some reason, that post performed extremely well. And so in the future, for some of our future ads, we tried to kind of connect the content and the interest to include that farmers market appeal, especially in the summer. And even if it doesn't completely make sense, you can still use it to your advantage. Okay, and then just a little plug we have here. Oh, go ahead.
And we had one question from Christine asking, can you make a comparison between these tools and Creator Studio? Is that something you or Kelly could speak to?
What was it? Creator Studio? Okay, yeah, I'm not familiar with that. Kelly?
Yeah, so yes, you can use a wide variety of third-party tools that like Creator Studio. Hootsuite's another, where instead of going to each individual platform, you can integrate in and then you can orchestrate all of your social posting, boosting, etc., from one sort of central platform, even though it's hitting different social venues, if you will. Those are some great tools to use, especially if you are tapping into various platforms, and as well. Those Hootsuite, Creator Studio, they have their own scheduling. Is in the targeting, the audience targeting is really aligned. It just integrates in with like what's available on Facebook, what's available on LinkedIn. So that can be a really good tool, especially in saving some time, but it's not entirely necessary. And I think some of those tools have gotten a little expensive too, so that may be a limitation. Sydney, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think Facebook charges to have a business manager backend.
No, it does not.
And neither does LinkedIn. It's just setting up the account. So that is something to consider.
Yeah, and I am familiar with Hootsuite, and I have tried that. I wish that I used it more, because it can be a little bit tedious to hit all of our platforms. But I did have some issues. I think because it was the free version, I had some issues with syncing up our accounts with it. And so I just I came up with a new method to get it across there. But yeah, if you can find a way to use that, it's definitely a time saver.
And it looks like Creator Studio is now part of Facebook. So there might be some integration that's just recently happened. And Sydney pointed to this a little earlier. Oftentimes things change relative to what you can target and how you can target. So it's a little bit of a moving target itself in what you can do. And sometimes you get into Facebook and you're like, oh, you can't do that anymore.
Okay, so yeah, just a quick plug for the 2021 Get There Challenge, and a great opportunity if you're interested in exploring social media advertising. We have a partner communications toolkit, which I'm sure Kelly can drop the link in the chat for us. But the 2021 Get There Challenge is coming up on October 4th. And our partner communications toolkit includes pre-written social media content, along with a lot of other content for newsletters, websites, etc. So if you're interested in exploring, maybe posting an ad for the first time, then you could potentially just use some of our content. We have graphics, and just put a little bit of money towards it and see what happens. It could just be a good way to test it out. And we'll be doing the same on Get There's Facebook. So if you don't have the budget for ads, you could also just share some of our posts about the challenge. And we also recently, or just last week, did a partner communications toolkit training. So if you're interested in that recording, feel free to just send me an email and I can send it over to you. And with that, here is our contact information. We do have this training, or we're continuing with the training for another 15 minutes for some Q&A and office hours. If you have some really specific questions, we're happy to dive into those. But if you have another meeting at 11, thank you for joining us, and feel free to reach out with any follow-up questions.
Kathy has her hand up.
Hi, all. I just have a quick question to double check to make sure it's not a setting that I have that has changed within my admin. Did Facebook take away the ability to share from your page as your page from other pages? Or is it just mine? When I click, if I'm in my Facebook page, not my own account, and I go to my news feed and I want to share, say, the Get There Challenge posts, the only option I get is share to group instead of share or share to page. Is that just me, or are other people experiencing that as well?
I think that I've actually run into that issue as well, but now I'm gonna try and jump on Facebook and try it again and just look and see what exactly I'm looking at. So maybe I can help answer that question if anyone else doesn't have an answer.
And again, it seems that a lot of times the functionality does change. And of course, it's without warning. And I'm also seeing here that other folks have had some similar issues, but apparently toggling between the profile and the page profile, you can make it work. So that might be one of the challenges. And when you share posts, you can't boost them and do paid. So, and I think that, you know, that is a big limitation, and means you just need to kind of recreate the post.
Sure, thank you. I figured out the workaround. It just isn't as easy as 2 clicks anymore.
So one thing on content curation that I didn't cover that might be helpful for you folks still on the channel here is, you know, when you're creating posts and you're working on the messaging, think about it from the audience perspective and try to put yourself into other people's shoes. I found this is one good strategy for reducing, even limiting those crazy troll type or otherwise just the wacky negative commentary. So that's another strategy to use in trying to, curate content that again doesn't necessarily evoke negatives. Looks like we've got another one here.
I can speak to this. So someone says, Christine says, I have seen some Instagram users have clever URLs in their bios that allows users to find a link to more content about the specific post that they're interested in learning more about. So we do this for Get There, and we use Linktree, which I'm sure you could find it just with Google, but I can also add the link in here. But that allows us to just say, because Instagram does not hyperlink your URL in your content. And so it's easy. So, if it's a long URL, then it's really difficult for people to then, copy that to get to it. And so we'll just say link in bio. And then we have our Linktree link in our bio because that is a hyperlink. And then that kind of lists out all of you can name it whatever you want and link to whatever you want. So for example, we could say, participate in the Get There Challenge October 4th, link in bio. And then you go to our link in bio, you can click on that. And then I could say Get There Challenge, and then you can click on that and get to the challenge page. So yeah, Linktree is the only one I'm super familiar with, but I think there are a number of other options.
Any other questions that we can answer? I think we've got a hand up with Catherine.
Hi, yeah. Can you all hear me okay?
We can.
So I had read somewhere that Instagram stories has actually become like keeping that curated and like posting things there has become more important than even like the post to your own gallery. And have you all found that to be true in your experience? And if so, like, do you have recommendations for what to kind of keep your stories updated with?
Sydney, did you catch that question?
Yeah. Admittedly, we don't do very many stories, but I have seen it on other projects used as a great way to engage with your audience. I think that some of the more successful content, and maybe we can even have WTA speak to this, because I know that they post on stories here and there, but just more engaging content. Like, there are a lot of fun options with stories, with polls and quizzes and these clickable things that your audience can actually participate in. So I think I would recommend that, just because it's a more unique way to engage. But not to put WTA on the spot, but if Caitlin or Julia want to speak to that at all?
Yeah, I do I don't use stories that often anymore, I feel like, but I do like them even for sharing other pages content is just kind of like a quick blurb, because I think that it's just another way for me to get people's attention because it's different than a post. And it seems like something that's more, since it's time sensitive, I think people are kind of like, oh, let me check it real quick and just see what it is. And then if there's a link, or you can use the cooler functions like polls or asking questions, it's just a different way to engage people. So I think having the diversity of that is just nice to try.
This is Caitlin. I can also speak to a thing I did before Julia started. Back before COVID, when we were still going to in-person meetings, I did like a little story that was like, "Hi, I'm Caitlin. Like, follow me along as I'm on my way to this meeting." And it was like me, like I'm getting on the bus now, and I'm getting on my bike, and like here's a picture of like the sunrise because it was early in the morning. Here's the route I took. So it was more like a live like follow me along kind of series, which like wouldn't have really worked for a post, but it worked well for a story. So that was fun.
So that brings up a really good point, to try to vary content across the board and just try new things. I've often found as well that what you don't expect to work, like Sydney was saying, turns out to be a bit of a gold mine. So there is that too. And sometimes, just doing a little bit of that A/B testing, both with your audience targeting and with your posts, can really help you kind of see that pattern that I think sometimes evolves, that helps to just guide the general effort forward. We're like, you know what, we just should never post on like Friday afternoon, or we shouldn't post on Sunday morning. Catherine, did you still have a question?
No, I don't. Do I still have my hand raised? There we go.
Cool, just making sure. Miss Kathy.
Hey there. Hey, I've got a, as we're talking, of course, I'm sharing the get their post to the Gorge Translink page. And then I'm thinking, okay, now how does it work with Instagram again? Those posts are not going immediately, like automatically over to my Instagram. It's only when I go from Instagram to Facebook, right? Isn't that still true? So how do I get anything I post to Facebook over to Instagram from Facebook?
Are you talking about for sharing a post or your own?
Yeah, I am sharing. This is a post that, I pulled from Get Their Oregon Facebook, and then I shared to Gorge Translink Facebook. And now I want to just send it over to the Gorge Translink Instagram. Is that possible? Not really.
Yeah, as far as I know, I don't think that's possible with sharing, because it's when you're sharing a post, I mean, it's just directly to, you're taking Facebook content, so you can't really like send that over to Instagram. But is that your understanding, Kelly?
Yeah, I don't think you can jump platforms is basically what you're saying, but I'm struggling to remember. You might be able to do that like in Hootsuite. So there might be some third-party tools that have that functionality.
Yeah, I mean, I know that you can set up your, like you said, your Instagram account to cross post.
Yeah.
So everything that goes on your Instagram, you can check a box that says also put this on Facebook. But you're right in that it doesn't work in the reverse, and it doesn't work for sharing. And Hootsuite might address the Facebook to Instagram thing, but I don't think anything addresses the sharing part.
Okay, so there's a particular, so what I need to do is go into the Get There Challenge toolbox and then find a similar post set up for Instagram, and then just share that directly to Gorge Translink Instagram.
Yeah, are you talking about today's post about the prizes?
No, it was actually a post from a couple of days ago that I liked.
Oh, okay. Then yeah, I was just thinking, because the one I posted today, that graphic isn't available in the toolkit yet, but kind of the general promo ones, yeah, you can definitely just go into the communications toolkit and, you know, find kind of that promo copy and just a general graphic and just post directly, I think is the best solution to get it on Instagram.
So if I went into Get Their Instagram and then shared from Get Their's Instagram, wouldn't that then show up as a share and then just generate more buzz instead of like pulling it from the toolkit directly? You know what I mean? Like it gives the Get There Instagram more visibility, doesn't it? If I share from Get There's Instagram, if I really want to support Get There's Instagram.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm pretty sure that when you share on Instagram, it's going to share to your story, which is great, because that actually, if you share it to your story, then people will go through your stories and then they'll see that Get There posted that, and then they can click straight to Get There's Instagram and then go, you know, follow or just engage with it if they want. So we would love it if you did that.
Yeah, because it kind of boosts, like if you are trying to support, let's say I'm trying to support Columbia Area Transit, and they're, you know, what they're putting out, I could just cut and paste their content and then just put it on Gorge Translink. But I would much rather go to them, like it, share it, so that they're gathering momentum as well as I'm sharing. It's that going viral type of thing, instead of just generating it from my end. I think it's, strategically you have to think about if you want to share it, sharing a post versus just recreating it and sticking it on your own site.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I think that's a great strategy. And especially if you don't have a ton of followers on Instagram, then that's a great solution. And we appreciate the free publicity.
Well, and it's always great to share content. I think it's, for a lot of reasons. It really is driving me crazy that you can no longer, it seems, boost a shared post. That was once upon a time a thing that you could do, which just made it so much easier for everybody. And sometimes you'd have to put it one in or not. I don't know. We'll keep looking for workarounds on that and see what we can come up with.
All right, well, we have a minute left. So are there any last minute questions? We are recording this, so I will be sending that out by tomorrow or maybe early next week.
much, Sydney and Kelly. I see a lot of names here that are not directly related to the Transportation Options Program and Get There. And I'm really excited that there were so many extra people that could join us. And I hope that you found value in today's presentation.
Yeah, thank you all for joining us.
And don't hesitate to reach out anytime if we can help.